1.
It's a completed Hornets Summer League. What did we learn? What players did we like? And who could have done a lot better? We'll talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get your pods. That includes YouTube, by the way. If you check us out on YouTube, you can check out Doug's sick hat. He's got a different one in the rotation constantly. That's the NBA All-Star Weekend hat. I feel like I saw those, wanted to put out the money to go get one. That was in the Spectrum Center. Did you get that at the Spectrum Center when the All-Star game was in town?
I did. Yeah. That was an
Sick
easy
hat.
Purchase for me.
It was. It looks very nice. And so you can go check that on YouTube, whereas I am wearing something very different than an all-star shirt or hat. It's actually the 2016-17 Hornets roster in caricatures. Yes. Now, if I would have gotten a shirt 1 year before that, it would have been the playoff roster, maybe a little more meaningful, but instead I went with a team that didn't make the postseason. I think they lost the last game of the year. The Knicks won, and that was the last chance they had to get to the postseason. But
I feel like that makes a lot of sense. It was a heartbreaking year, but I felt like at the end of that season, we all felt like A, they didn't deserve to make the playoffs. B, if they did make the playoffs, they were going to get absolutely hammered. And C, I think we were all wanting them to not make the playoffs just because we didn't want to see that happen.
Yeah, that was when we decided the previous, the offseason leading into it, we decided to trade our first-round pick for Marco Bellinelli, who has since blocked the show and also didn't help us get to that postseason. So, hey, look, man, we've only been there like 3 times since the franchise came back to Charlotte, so there's not too many roster shirts I can wear. 2016-17, I'll show you some love. Speaking of rosters we're going to discuss today, it's the Summer League roster. Done. Over. 5 games. Gone. Are you happy that Summer League is over, or did you want more Summer League to evaluate some of these young guys?
Well, I would say that I am not looking forward to a month plus of no, or really almost 2 months now of no basketball to talk about. I'm not looking
Definitely
forward
in the cons
to that.
list.
So in that way, yes. But in another way, Summer League is messy. Summer League is a lot of young players. It's a lot of players trying to make it, and that doesn't make for like the most exciting product all of the time. So did I want to see like 5 more games? I'm not sure about that, but I am going to miss seeing the ball hit the old hardwood.
Yeah, right. It's us as content makers. It would be nice to have these games to discuss and give us some more content. We're going to give you the classic MVP debate. That's going to be tomorrow on Locked On Hornets. I believe Nada will be joining us to hand out some Summer League superlatives, if you will. So, yeah, the content kind of ending. But also, Doug, it wasn't a very pretty Summer League session. And I don't know if we go back in history, recent history, and say, oh, that was an awesome Summer League session from that Charlotte Hornets team. It's not like we've been gifted with a lot of great basketball. This is a team that loses all the time. They got their first Summer League win for the first time since 2019, and they got another one. That was it. They would finish 2-3. They would lose this most recent game against Minnesota, game number 5, and then they're done. At the same time, I just didn't feel great about individual players in this session as much as maybe you like some of these others, right? Because you would go in, and I think Kai Jones was under the microscope coming in. He was one of the guys that was going to be a top storyline to evaluate. Pretty disappointing. JT Thor, excellent game to end on, so that's perfect, right? At least we got something great to end on from him. But for the most part, I think a lot of people would describe his Summer League as underwhelming. Doug, like the guy I feel the best about, who gave us the most consistent good parts of his game, I do think it's the first-round rookie Mark Williams. As far as a consistent, you can bank on me defending, you can bank on me doing this to help this team every single game. I think Mark Williams probably was the most consistent in that area. At the same time, you go to a lot of different players to evaluate how they were individually, and it just was like, yeah, kind of an underwhelming Summer League, in my opinion.
I will not sit here and stand for, I won't sit here and stand for you discounting what JT Thor did in that final summer league game. This was meaningful for the more Thor movement. This was meaningful for JT Thor. Let me read you the stats. How dare you, sir? Let me read you the stats. 8 of 13 from the field, 28 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steals. JT Thor was all over the place and almost got this summer league team in contention to win that final game and have a winning summer league, which the Charlotte Hornets do not do much of. They don't win a ton in summer league, and JT Thor heroically put the team on his back. They didn't play Mark Williams late, which I thought was a good idea. You'd seen enough from Mark. You got what you wanted out of Mark. Sit him. Don't play him in a situation where both these teams are playing really hard and, risk an injury. I liked that maneuver by the team. But JT Thor was out there hustling until the buzzer sounded, and that to me is Clifford was still there, by the way. Steve Clifford was still there. He did an interview with Ashley Shahamady, who was the sideline reporter for this game. He was still there looking, and I think he got a great look at a player that he can count on next season, and that's one, JT Thor.
I apologize to you. I apologize for the more Thor movement. I apologize to JT himself because I did not want to come in and disrespect him like that. I was only talking about overall in Summer League.
He hit a game-winning shot. He hit a game-winning shot in sudden death.
Thank God for that because
overtime.
Everybody hated his game in that contest. But you're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the negativity.
Narrative moments.
I'm sorry.
It's all about Walker. It's all about narrative moments.
Yeah, it is. It is all about the narrative. And he gave us a good one yesterday, or the most recent game they played, I should say, and scored 28 points. Did so in 22 minutes, too. Like 5 steals. 28 points, 22 minutes,
efficient.
50% from the three-point line. I will say every single part of the box score you looked at, there was a lot to like from what he gave you. Also got to the foul line, I believe was 7 of 8 from the free throw line. So got fouled, attacked, jumped from just inside the free throw line and slammed it. Very big wingspan game for JT Thor, showing it off, having that dunk, getting 5 steals, right? So I do like JT Thor. If you were to ask me, who are the guys you feel okay about being in the rotation next year, it would be JT Thor, and it would be Mark Williams. And after that, McGowan's, we can dive into this a little bit more as the episode goes, but McGowan's was extremely hot and cold. What he showed was awesome as a bucket getter, and if a shot wasn't flying, then all of a sudden you just had him jacking up shots and, a lot of misses, which is, again, okay. Second-round pick. Do the scoring thing if you can, Bryce. But at the same time, yeah, like that, it's just really hot and cold. So you're right. I'm sorry, JT. I'm sorry, Doug. Please continue the good feelings as what Summer League is for on JT and maybe some other guys you liked.
Well, and I thought he made a case because I think the key to him getting more rotation minutes this season is if he can make a case to play the 3 and the 4. If he's only making the case to play the 4, more Thor is not more 4. It's got to be more 3.
It's funny. I can see your brain working in there, and then the light bulb goes off, and then I know what I'm going to get, and it's fun to watch all of that cook before you deliver the product.
Yeah. I think it's got to be versatility, and I think yes, there was a shaky start there for JT Thor, but he was working on displaying the versatility, and he is one of the players that got better as time went on. He got more comfortable. If we did have 10 Summer League games, I think JT Thor would be dominating on this team by games, 8, 9, and 10. Like he needed time to kind of, and that's the weird thing about Summer League, right? Is that you only get 5 games. By the time you really get warmed up, it's all over. So I think JT Thor showed us exactly why by that 5th game, why he's somebody that Steve Clifford can count on this next season.
Well, look, no, to continue to defend JT after I apparently dogged him at the beginning in a way I didn't intend to. But yeah, like you're right about JT getting better because there was a better role for him as we started to continue. He got a little bit more comfortable and he looked a lot more decisive with the basketball in his hands when he was out in transition. If he got it out on the wing, he made one jab step and then a couple of dribbles in, and then he was able to dunk it. Or, he had his very decisive shot on the three-point line, all right, this is the time it needs to go up. And the fact that he shot 38% from three, Doug, like that's actually pretty damn good for Summer League. I think it was 37, 38 in between. The fact that he got to that number, that's pretty good. That's what you would want. If he shot that next year, I mean, that's excellent. You'll take that every day. So, yeah, I do think he got better. I do think there is a pretty clear role for him. If we want defined roles for these guys, that might be the more accurate way to discuss Mark Williams and JT. Clearly, we know what Mark Williams is going to do and what he's going to be asked to do. I think he performed well. JT Thor, at least the last game, you have him, I think fill out that identity more so. And what you're going to ask him to do, boom, 28 points, 22 minutes, really efficient. So, yeah, JT got his game, the last one, and Summer League ends, and we'll continue to talk about that in just a moment. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We're going to discuss more of Summer League, what we learned. We gave you some of the guys that we liked. Now, what about some of the players that could have done a little more for us? And is there any other stat that might jump out to us? We will get to that later on. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball regular season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and the easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. More Summer League talk coming up next. Lockdown on Hornets. We started by disrespecting JT Thor, unintendedly so.
Whoa.
What did I do wrong now? What did I do wrong now?
We is doing a lot of work there. We did not do
Are you
anything.
a part of this show? Hey, we go down together, baby. It's you and me. If we make a mistake, then it's we. I said what I said. It's we.
No, I'm not going down. No, listen, I am the president of the More Thor movement. I cannot be associated with that kind of Thor slander.
That's fine. I apologize. For slandering JT Thor. I've done that a couple of times. But we did look at what was an impressive stat line in the last game of the Summer League session. Doug, why don't you pull up the stats? Let's take a look at this table of numbers to see exactly what else stands out to us. Because, one, it was clearly the star of the show was JT. But what else do you see here, Doug, from some of the other guys that we're going to take a look at as far as the entire Summer League goes?
Yeah, it was the star of the final game, but I would say the guy that probably people are talking most about would be Bryce Mcgowan, who did lead the team in scoring by 0.1 points per game. He averaged 14.6 in Summer League to Nick Richards' 14.5, followed by JT Thor, who probably vaulted himself over several players with that 28-point performance. Right. You'll do that when you score 28 in one game of 5. He goes to 12.2. But I'd say people talk most about Bryce Mcgowan, just how comfortable he looked out there. I think people who looked a little bit deeper, like we did, said, hey, yes, definitely look comfortable, look like somebody that can play, like somebody that will belong at some point. But there are also some serious inconsistencies in Bryce McGowan's game, even offensively. I mean, just we knew defense was going to be an issue, but I think there were some offensive consistency issues that I think, will have to get worked out over time.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the first segment. Bryce McGowan's, we did call, was going to be a candidate to lead the Summer League roster in scoring, and that's exactly what he did. Nick Richards only played the 2 games, but did finish 0.1, a little lower, 14.5 compared to Bryce McGowan's 14.6. I would also say Bryce McGowan's played the most minutes of anybody on average, 31. You look at these minutes per game for everybody else, JT, 25, LJ Figueroa, 24, Kai Jones, 20, Tyshawn, 22, and then Jalen Crutcher, 26.5. So, pretty a large amount of minutes for him. Everybody else is under 20 that I didn't mention. And Bryce has thrown up a lot of shots, clearly looking for opportunities to score constantly, and essentially gave us 2 good games, right? Like the first game, comes out, impresses. Third game, goodness gracious, absolutely bonkers performance. I don't even know what kind of point total was, like 27, something like that. But very good performance from Bryce there. And then, threw up a lot of shots and missed a lot the last 2. But that's okay, right? Like, I feel like throwing that caveat on every criticism because it is Summer League, because these guys are so young. In Bryce and Mark's case, they are literally playing the first NBA organized activity of their life. So it's okay to struggle at times. But yeah, I think it's still okay for him to also be maybe the number one player you're talking about, because a second round pick that has the ability to lead your team in scoring, also very cool. So it's not a bad thing.
Well, speaking of minutes played, I think that's what stands out to me. I'm on it right now here on the screen share. Mark Williams only getting 19.4 minutes per game. Jalen Crutcher getting 26.5, I think tells two stories. One, that Mark Williams didn't start until they decided to shut Nick Richards down, and that depressed his minutes. How much of that was, well, we kind of know what we know with Mark Williams, and we want to make sure that our first round pick is healthy. And how much of that was, well, Mark needs to earn his minutes. The second story is the 26.5 for Jalen Crutcher. I think anyone that watched Summer League is going to say that might have been too many minutes for Jalen Crutcher, but they didn't have any real options to go to. This team was short on decent point guard options. Jalen Crutcher, I think that's turnovers, averaged 3 turnovers per game. And it was a struggle watching him trying to play make for Mark Williams, for Kai Jones, and for some of these other players. And I think it probably, if you have a point guard that's, just a replacement level point guard, then you probably see bigger games from Bryce. You probably see bigger games from Kai. You probably see bigger games from Mark Williams. I don't think you can question that.
Real roster construction issues with the Summer League team, and it all starts in the backcourt. You want to emphasize what everybody's skill set suggests they do well, and they didn't when they decided to avoid the backcourt the way they did, the Hornets being they in this case, and it was a real problem. It was something we expected coming in, and it's exactly how it played out in these 5 games. Doug, if I were to ask you who the most disappointing player was, this isn't going superlatives, right? I mean, I feel like that's safe to ask you before we get to tomorrow, because you look at these names. I mean, I would say it's Kai Jones. The real project. We wanted to see him improve. We were all very excited about what his offensive role could be, and we still don't really know, right? I mean, we tried to do this where we put him at the 4 the first 3 games, and then Kai Jones ends up playing at the center, and he did better there, but points, went down significantly. He did have 4 blocks in this most recent outing, but also I still think there's some issues on where he's supposed to be at the exact right time, maybe some rim protection issues for Kai Jones, but the athleticism is still fun. He did dunk everything, a few games back. Yet still, it just feels like we didn't get a whole lot of clarity on what he's going to be moving forward, and it's all very frustrating at the same time because the talent's there.
Honestly, I don't know that I'm disappointed by Kai Jones. I'm disappointed in some of the decision making, but also he's young. I think this was all. I'm disappointed that Kai Jones isn't all of a sudden, an all-star player. But I think that's an unfair expectation to put on Kai Jones, that he would have developed so massively over last season. So the decision making, the fact that he took 10 3-pointers and missed all of them in that first Summer League game, and some of the 3-pointers that he would continue to take, I thought were disappointing. In the final game, I thought some of the look at the final play of the Summer League game. Okay, it's close. They get the missed free throw by the Timberwolves. They have they get the ball back in that final possession. They have an opportunity to tie the game or even win the game. And Kai Jones takes it, tries to be a hero, and then fumbles the basketball away, because I think Kai Jones still sees himself. And this happened. And I don't know if Kai Jones went through like a major growth spurt, but this, I wouldn't be surprised by that, because this feels like a guy that grew up thinking he was a guard and then all of a sudden became a big.
Well, he didn't play basketball till late. I mean, which is another point for you, and totally understand that. But, and I know you were probably just saying this to like kind of sell the point home, right? But you talked about it would be an unfair ask for him to be an all-star. And I'm not asking that, I'm not asking Kai Jones to come in and show me all-star potential. I'm asking him to see if there's like some minutes for him at the back end of the rotation. Like, I feel like my expectations were tempered. I wanted to see real improvement to the point where second year, do we get the JT Thor treatment? because JT was supposed to be a project too, and then he broke into that rotation and did pretty decent, and he's a really young player as well. And so, okay, that's okay. Like, guys improve at their own rate. So could we get something from Kai that indicated to me that, hey, we can be comfortable seeing Kai on a real NBA court playing NBA minutes? Let's say, I don't know, throwing it out there, could he play 40 games this year? You know, a lot of them be injury or DNP CDs, the other 42. Could he play 40, give you 15 minutes in those games, have a couple of book night moments where we're saying, hey, you know, watch out? Could we have gotten that this year? And Doug, I don't feel comfortable with him being out on an NBA court right now in a winning situation. And I don't know if that's different, but I know that's my feeling.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it would have to be context, right? If the team were not in a position to win basketball games, then you'd obviously be comfortable seeing him out there getting NBA minutes, something that he didn't get an opportunity to do last season. And general manager Mitch Kupchak would later lament. But I don't think he's ready to be a role player on a winning basketball team. But I would be disappointed by Kai Jones if he had come out in summer league and shrunk, you know, and not been a factor, not shown energy on both ends. But he was blocking the basketball. He's running in transition. He was yamming the heck out of the ball. I mean, he was just all over the place. So yes, I think you can be slightly frustrated by his decision making, but to me, it's a stretch to say, wow, Kai Jones had a disappointing summer league. Yeah, he's continuing to develop. He is not fully cooked yet.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I understand that. The motor's never going to be a problem with Kai, and that gives you hope. You get players with high motor, it means they're going to put the work in to do the right stuff, and that's fantastic. That is a saving grace. You know, it's not like he had all bad moments. We were just talking about him driving and finishing extremely strong. You know, the athleticism's there clearly. That stuff didn't go. At some point, the good decisions, they have to be there. You're right. It doesn't have to be there right now. It doesn't. But I would have liked to have seen more made. I would have liked to have seen something that suggests, okay, now's the time. He doesn't have to stay in Greensboro so much this year. And he talks like he's not going to Greensboro. Like, he talks like he's going to spend a lot more time with the active roster this year. And if that's the case, I just hope it's not so many minutes towards the very end, if not at the very end of the bench.
Well, confidence is not an issue with Kai Jones.
No,
I mean, he came in the summer league saying no one could guard him. And it was true. I mean, no other person could guard him. Kai Jones did a great job in that first summer league game of guarding himself by taking, bad 3-point opportunities. But he was right in summer league when he put the ball on the floor. In good situations, he got to the rim at will. Will that be the case when he's, in preseason up against actual NBA level talent? I think that's yet to be determined. And he was also a player that was playing a little bit out of position until later on in the summer league when Nick Richards went away and they were able to play him as backup 5. You started to see him play a little bit better. Although I thought, in that final summer league game and even in the fourth game, he struggled a little bit still guarding smaller players. And he's a guy, we don't expect Mark Williams to really succeed at that. That's an expectation kind of thing. With Kai Jones, I think you do expect him, hey, you need to be able to switch a little bit and have some defensive versatility and not be just completely, he was getting back cut. There were awareness issues along with just getting blown by. So I think those are things to clean up. But my overall thing is that Kai Jones has not made the argument yet. But he does have a preseason, an opportunity to make an argument to Steve Clifford that he's somebody that can be a game changer.
I didn't mean to make this the Kai Jones segment, but he's so fascinating, right? Because a lot of his development kind of is predicated on how a team views him and how they are able to develop him. The rawer you are, the more you're kind of dependent on the team putting you in the right situations to succeed.
That's tough to say. That's tough to say, by the way. The rawer you are.
Yeah. I had felt it. At the same time, I decided to go with it because I felt people got it. But, it's true.
There's like the rural juror.
It's almost like drawer. Like, it doesn't know if it wants to be one syllable or two.
You are.
Yeah. So the more raw he is, the more raw a prospect is, the more dependent they are on the organization putting them in the right situations. And so here we are trying to figure out, hey, here's this crazy athlete that fans And other people seem to compare his body to a guy like Giannis, who doesn't have the skill that Giannis does, but
his ability to take like 3 steps from the half court line and dunk it. I mean, that's very Giannis-like.
A triple jump god, right? Like, this is somebody that has that kind of ability, and we don't know what to do with him. All right, well, let's put him at the 4 because he also has this shooting ability. Okay, it didn't really work out there.
I don't know that he has that.
This is him coming out of college because he shot 40%. If you bought into Kai, then a part of it might have been you buying into the perimeter shot. So, okay, he can shoot. All right, we'll play him at the 4. Ooh, 3 summer league games in the second session. All right, we'll put him at the 5. All right, that's better. But still, it's hard. Like, they don't know what to do. They've got this awesome thing. I always go to the Malcolm in the Middle example where the kids, they find this water slide and they know it's the best thing ever and they just don't know what to do with it. And so they ruin their weekend trying to figure out the best possible thing they can do with it. And in the end, the weekend's over and they never got to use it. It's like this diving board or slide or whatever. It's like, Kai Jones is that. What do you do with them? Because there's something special, but we just got to get that out of them.
Well, and they're stuck in the middle a little bit because, fans that watched Kai Jones in Summer League and didn't want him to take 3-point shots, I wanted to say, yeah, but if he can't hit the 3-point shots, then how
couldn't
do
either.
you
know what? I don't want. Yeah, right.
Because Giannis hits the 3-pointers occasionally, but he doesn't really have to because his body is so scary that he can just bully his way to the rim. Kai Jones did it in Summer League using his quickness, using his length, but he's not like bowling ball knocking guys out of the way to get to the rim. And that's going to be the challenge in preseason coming up for Kai is how do you do that when guys can keep you in front better, and then when you do get by them, there are 2 or 3 help defenders to knock you out of the way. So that's the challenge with Kai. Is he going to get bigger? Is he going to get better at shooting? Is he going to get better with his decision making? Which of those things is going to improve, or do they all 3 improve? It's all of those are open questions.
All right, that was the Kai Jones segment. We'll talk more about the Summer League as the week goes on, but we have something else for you regarding the regular season coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We have NBA odds to get to, over under. What is the number going to be set at? I have not seen this. I have not seen what Vegas put the over-under on for the Charlotte Hornets. So Doug is going to ask me that question coming up next on the Locked On Podcast Network.
This is Locked On Hornets.
So wait a minute. Do we value players that forget plays all of a sudden? I thought we loved LeBron James because he remembered he could cite to you every single play from every game he's ever played in. Now all of a sudden we like players who have no idea what happened on the previous play.
I don't think you want him to play scared, right?
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
When I think of over-unders going into a season for the Charlotte Hornets, I think about how the Hornets have outperformed those over-under numbers each of the last 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. And that was always a point for the James Borrego fan club that, hey, this is somebody that actually beats the Vegas expectations. And then instead he's gone. And now we're here with Steve Clifford as the new coach. But that's what I think of, right? Like how the Hornets, the expectations have not been set very high, but they would always win, 2 or 3 games above the expected outcome. And so could that happen again this year? Now, I haven't seen it. The Charlotte Hornets have had a wild offseason. I imagine this number would look drastically different had there been a couple of things not take place. But, Doug, you have seen the over-under number. Is this about where you would have guessed, too, just before I put my guess in? Like, is this – yeah, of course you're going to say you were going to guess it exactly right. But, is it in the neighborhood? Does this number make sense to you?
I think it does relative to what has happened, and that's a tough thing about Vegas has to operate on the information that it has. Mm-hmm. Vegas can't. They try as they might. They cannot predict the future, and so they are basing all of these on the information that they have, and I think if you look back on previous seasons, right? Last season, let's take last season, for example. Okay. I haven't found a 2021-22 odds over under that had the Hornets anywhere above 40. I've seen 38. I've seen 37. I've seen 38.5. I've seen 39. but I haven't seen anywhere that had them in 40. They won 43 games. Why did they beat the Vegas odds? Because you had Miles Bridges completely overperform what anyone's expectations were last season, because Cody Martin and Kelly Oubre, you had these role players come through in a way that they overperformed the expectations. I mean, we were talking about Kelly Oubre for Sixth Man of the Year there for a little while. We were talking about Miles Bridges for Most Improved. And then you had LaMelo Ball become an all-star. And we all expected that to happen, but maybe that was even a little bit soon on the expectations for LaMelo Ball, but he took his game to another level. And so all of these things, when you want to beat Vegas odds, those are the kinds of things that have to happen. And so I think here we sit again, where the organization has not made a ton of moves in the offseason. And so I think the Vegas odds are going to represent that. So saying that, okay. Walker,
gotcha.
Where do you, I mean, I kind of gave it away a little bit, but where do you think they have the over-under set? So this is, by the way, this is PointsBet's USA releasing their regular season win totals.
Yeah, it's tough to say. So if the Hornets, they finished above 500 last year, having gone through what they've gone through, I'm gonna put the over under at 34. Give me 34 wins.
Wow, no, 36.5. So you are even more pessimistic than Vegas. So Charlotte is sitting at 36.5. Just for reference, they have Cleveland, Chicago, and Portland at 41.5. Interesting on Cleveland, because other than the Hornets, I mean, Cleveland well outgrew their expectations from Vegas. I mean, Vegas had them at like 25 wins or something, and they far beat those expectations. And still, I feel like they're shorting Cleveland a little bit at 41.5. Then at 43.5 is New Orleans, 44.5 is Toronto. Moving backwards from Charlotte at 36.5, they have Washington at 35.5, then Sacramento at 31.5. In total, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams below Charlotte. Charlotte, the 9th worst team in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think they would.
There are several teams that they don't. By the way, there's several teams that they haven't included. Yeah, they don't have odds yet on Lakers, Nets, Jazz, Knicks. But I don't think any of those teams are probably worse than Charlotte.
Well, yeah, Nets maybe, depending on what happens
depending
with KD.
On what happens.
Yeah, for sure, and that's why the odds aren't out there. Same with this Donovan Mitchell stuff, more for the Knicks. That's why you don't have the Knicks odds, presumably why. And so right now, I think if I counted that right, the Charlotte Hornets would be the 4th worst team in the East. Washington, Orlando, Detroit, Indiana off, so the 5th worst team, if that's right. Yeah, so those 4 teams would be finishing worse than Charlotte if these numbers all hit in the regular season, which, of course, that gets you into play-in territory. And here we are again with the Hornets getting play-in, and all we're doing is just hoping that we avoid a disastrous performance. I think, I went 34. Like, I get 36.5. I don't know what they've done to help themselves so much win next year. They brought back Cody Martin. They drafted Mark Williams, which I think can help, but I'm not going to say this team is going to be a lot better because a rookie comes in at, 15 overall, right? Like that's not going to say, oh, okay, now we're great for next year. Yeah, I think you finally have that piece, but I don't think it's also going to make you this playoff team next year. They haven't done anything else. It doesn't mean they're done. There's still some things you could do. But I don't know what that is at this point. Donovan Mitchell we've talked about a couple of times, but still the odds are that the Hornets won't land him. DeAndre Ayton going back to Phoenix. Now he has to sign off on any trade in the next year. So DeAndre has to want to come to Charlotte if you really want to try to go after him. Miles Turner, that thing lives on forever because now he's back with Indiana and wouldn't be going to Phoenix in some sign and trade. My point being, even the players that it was going to be tough to land anyway, now some of those odds have even diminished since then. The pool's drying up.
Yeah, I think there are still a few, maybe 1 or 2 moves left for the Hornets to make to fill out the roster. I have to think that the Hornets at this point, if they can't make a major move for Donovan Mitchell, if that doesn't seem realistic for them, then they have to be thinking in a similar way that they thought, I think, at the beginning of last season, hey, let's take whatever squad we have, let's take them into the first 20, 30 games and see what we got. And then once we see what we got, then we can make some moves, So they may not make a lot of moves left just to leave roster spots open, leave some potential to make moves later on to fill in some gaps that they may perceive that they have. But all of this is they need internal improvement. And again, I go back to what I said at the beginning of this segment. In order to outperform these expectations, you've got to have players outperform what they did last season. So that means LaMelo takes his game not only to an all-star level, but potentially an all-NBA level. What does that mean? Mark Williams performs better than you would expect a 15th. Maybe he gets himself, he's starting center and he's doing so well defensively that he's getting some like sneak dark horse whispers for rookie of the year. Maybe you have a Jalen McDaniels. Listen, depending on what happens with Miles Bridges, there may be opportunities for players to come in and get significantly more minutes. What they do with those minutes will be the difference between Charlotte Hornets meeting these expectations at 36.5 or possibly exceeding them. If it's Jalen McDaniels, if it's Cody Martin, if it's PJ Washington. I was reading an interesting article on At the Hive looking at his numbers relative to his rookie year numbers, and they haven't changed all of that much, especially offensively. He's generally the same player he was. Mm-hmm. I would argue that a lot of that has been opportunity, not necessarily skill set. And so I think if he's given a little bit more opportunity to be more involved this season, he could be one of the players to watch. You have to walk away from the first 20 games. If the Hornets are going to beat these expectations, you have to walk away from the first 20 games in the same way that we walked away from the first 20 games last season going, hey, wait a minute. I didn't know that these players were going to be able to do that. And then you have to sustain that. That's what the Hornets didn't do last season. Gordon Hayward's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's a huge thing.
That's a huge. I was thinking that the whole time.
Right.
I mean, it's
these are the kinds of things that have to happen. They're either going to, and that's the thing. They're either going to happen or they're not going to happen. And if they don't happen, then 36.5 seems realistic.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely does. The LaMelo conversation, I'm sure we'll have it a million times. That's fascinating because this guy is already awesome. He's already an all-star at a very young age. And I wonder what is left there scoring-wise. Because to me, you talk about him taking his level, taking that next level, right? Going to a place where he's flirting with all-NBA contention, just avoiding the defensive analysis right now. If we're talking strictly offensive, we've asked that question in a half-court set. Is this someone that can take over to the point where he's averaging, give me your over-under there, 24? Can he get to that 23, 24 mark? And that is some pretty special territory when you're averaging that kind of points per game. And so when you're talking about how he can get there, finishing better at the rim, which is what we've talked about a lot, attacking and beating guys off of the dribble, with a little bit more space. Those are the things I think offensively, because the shot's there right now. I fully believe in the shot. You have to. It's just all about the 2-point game as far as the scoring goes. And is that floater going to be better? Because he goes to the floater a lot, but the floater is real hit or miss for him right now. Can he be more consistent with inside the 3-point mark scoring to the point where he can get 24 points per game? And that gives you a few wins, Doug. Like that, if he becomes that player, that gives you the over on a Vegas set total.
Well, and it could be an interesting, we could be looking back on this 3 or 4 years from now is a very interesting year for LaMelo Ball, because this could be a situation where it's a little bit trial by fire, where he's forced, maybe uncomfortably, to become a lead scorer because they simply don't have many other options to do that. And so we may come away from this season going, okay, they tried that. He's not that. He's a lot of things, because it doesn't mean that he can't become a perennial star player in this league. I think it would to me, it would be extremely difficult for him to become one of the 5 best players in the league without scoring a lot of points. We just don't see that.
You
anymore,
have to,
right?
So it's the Chris Paul effect. I think that's what you want with more decorated postseason history. I don't want to do where Chris Paul is in the pantheon, but we all know Chris Paul's a really good player. You know, Chris, but he's also not a 24-point per game average scorer. He shoots threes really well.
Right.
He runs the game. He's extremely smart. The difference between Chris Paul and LaMelo being that Chris loves to slow the game now as he's gotten older for sure, and LaMelo wants to run right now. He said himself, like 100 possessions, I want 100 of those possessions in transition. But you get my point. Like, that's the type of impact that LaMelo might have to have on the game. That sounds like future episodes, Doug. Like, those topics are really interesting, you know, about LaMelo, what his ceiling could be. And that's exactly what we'll do later on as the offseason goes on. And maybe we even get into that a little bit with Nada, who is supposed to be joining us tomorrow and giving out some of those Summer League superlatives. So check us out tomorrow. Again,
I'll give you, can I tease this a little bit? He told me when I asked him to be on the show, he said, I've got some thoughts that run counter to what you two have been talking about.
I'm going to guess more so me. I just based off what Nada's tweets are, I almost want to ask some of these questions and then see if I'm right on how we disagree just based off of his Twitter. Like, is Nada's Twitter account indicative of what he's going to say on the podcast? And that's what I kind of want to make those guesses. But
so
we can all do
I've
that
set
tomorrow.
it up. Hopefully we can deliver tomorrow. We'll bring him on, see if he and where he disagrees with us, and have it out.
All right, Nada the Scribe. You can follow him on Twitter, and then you can give him some hell, too, if you want to, about some of his takes. Thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate you making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. After us, make sure you go check out Locked On NBA. It's just a 30-minute daily update on what's taking place throughout the association. You can find it anywhere you get your pods. Again, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.